In my evolution of media consumption, the first thing I noticed is the anesthetic, the fact that um, the more media one consumes, the more media that I consume, particularly in audio or video format, the more numb and dissociated I am with my body. If I watch a video for 4 hours, for example, and get up, I may be mildly dissociative, and that's a concern. The second is just the uncertainty of purpose. What is the purpose of consuming media? Is it to numb out, etc.? And my thoughts about how to respond and make media more positive lie in two fields. One is to stimulate thoughts and feelings that lead to greater integrity and greater awareness and greater engagement with the world. The other is to facilitate well-being and integration of some kind between the media world and the external world. And I'm using this this video to talk about something else, which is the dynamic of passive criticism versus active criticism, destructive criticism versus constructive criticism, because it's all in this domain for me, which is the question how to have a more engaged, active relationship with whatever it is we're engaged with. And in the case of TED Talks, which was one of the first kind of projects along these lines, I had watched 400 TED Talks, and the actions that I had taken primarily consisted of building a community blackboard at my house. So in response to one TED Talk, in which someone put up a community blackboard, and then all kinds of people filled out all kinds of information that brought the community together, I built a blackboard. Built a little arbor to house the blackboard, put in a stone bench, and put in a stone patio, and then put dog bags for poop, a water dish for drinking, that's self-filled, and then I had chalk, for the chalkboard. And then I would ask questions like, what do you appreciate today? Or what's your favorite place to travel? Or what's the most exciting event you did this month? And then as neighbors would walk by, they'd let their dogs water and they'd let their dogs water. They would, do a whole host of various things. And they loved it. And so that's great. So the question in my mind was, if I've watched 400 ideas worth spreading, 1, and I'm highly proactive, 2, and I've done one event out of 400, and I do believe it was 3 events out of 400, I just forget the other ones, but I recall doing like 3. But that's a 1% dissemination or inspiration to action. So then the question is, why are these ideas worth spreading? What's the point of spreading an idea if nobody acts on them? And I thought, am I the only one who's not acting on TED Talks? And so I asked 10 people. Almost everyone, around, where I live has heard of TED and watched a few talks. And so I asked 10 people, have you ever done anything after listening to a TED Talk? And they all said no. So I had done 1% of the great ideas worth spreading, and 10 people had done none. And so I thought, this is not an anomalous phenomena. And so I thought, well, what's the problem with people watching ideas worth spreading and not acting? Well, one problem is they're not acting in other things they might be doing in the rest of their lives. The other problem is desensitization. We know that our time, that our money, that basically our energy shows up in natural resources, in time, and in money. Our energy and the way that we spend our energy reflects our values. I mean, there's no way around the fact that if I could, spend time with this person or spend time with this person, and I have 1 hour, and I choose to spend time with this person, that what I'm telling myself and those two individuals is that you are more important to me, for whatever reason, than you are. Because we pray, we express our values by how we allocate our energy. And so while that's a pretty crude reduction of energy, time, money, and natural resources, you can say it's attention, it's an emotion, it's all kinds of things. But, it's energy. And so if we're spending our energy in this way, it is schizophrenic, and lacking in integrity to say, no, we really value this, but we spend all our time here. And we split individuals all the time. Oh, family is the most important thing. We're just going to have a career that takes us away from our family 12 hours a day, which leaves us drained and grumpy when we get home, that spits all over our family. But family is the most important thing. It's schizophrenic, and it's actually destructive, because then we're operating on a mental map of reality that has nothing to do with the underlying experiential map of reality. And the only value of a map is that it correlates with reality. If I give you a beautiful map to your destination that points in the exact wrong direction of your destination, that's not a useful map. That's an incredibly damaging map, because it pretends that if you do this, this, and this, you're going to go this way, but in fact, you're going to go in the exact opposite direction, which is worse than saying, I don't know where I'm going, because then you can find out and ask questions. And so if people were spending, 400 TED Talks amounts to over 100 hours of time. That's the amount of time I take to write a book, for example. And so if we've got, people spending time that do nothing, what it communicates, because we can fool ourselves and some of our people that, our family is really important, but we're going to spend all our time away from our family because they're so important, and things like that. We can fool that, but we don't fool the psyche. We know exactly what is and isn't important by how we allocate our energy. We know that our fears are more important than our desires when we repeatedly avoid our desires to run away from our fears. The psyche isn't fooled. And so it seemed to me highly destructive if we exposed great ideas and then did absolutely nothing about them. Because this communicates to the psyche, these aren't important ideas. You watch a thing about saving a rainforest, and then you do absolutely nothing. You don't donate any money to the rainforest. You don't change any habit. And so it's basically saying that this media reality is completely separate from our integrated or our visceral reality. And in short, we're going numb. If you watched a child being beaten in front of you and you did nothing, what you're saying is beating children is just fine. Because I can't be bothered to even interfere in the beating right in front of me. The same is, of course, true when we do it on the inside. When our inner child comes up and we shame and harass and hate it. Then of course, why wouldn't it be on the outside as well? But the whole way that we change and create reality and worlds is what we respond to and how we go about it and stuff. And that tells us, more importantly than it tells anyone else, what's valuable to us. And so it's really important to take action on something you say is important. To spend energy, to give attention, to give prayer, to give money, to give time. And then there's no question this is important. And of course, the integrity of the brain is such that if you say that this is important because people are important, then you're saying people all over the place are important. We do some, bizarre, fracturing of the species, etc. And that's my group, and that isn't my group, and I love these people, and I hate these people. But in general, this is the degradation of torture, for example. It's very difficult to torture one human being without torturing the corresponding part within the psyche that relates and empathizes to that part. For example, we have this big war on terror, which is really a war on human beings who feel helpless, angry, hurt, and desperate, because those are the only people that commit terrifying acts. Very powerful people don't go out to hurt other people. Very powerful parts of ourself doesn't set out to, hurt and have revenge. Very small parts of ourself, very lonely parts of ourselves, very traumatized and scared and angry parts of ourselves set out to have revenge and hurt other people, because that's the language of impotence. That's the language of grief and numbness and all of that. And so that's going on the outside, it's going on the inside. And the question is, how do we respond? And the idea of dropping bombs on weddings to even the idea of killing, tracking down and killing everyone who feels small, impotent, powerless, hate, revenge, rage, and all the things that come out. Because, for example, revenge is a countermeasure to incredible sense that, I was hurt and nobody cared, and my pain didn't matter to anyone, and I'm going to have revenge. I'm going to make you feel that way. And then there's a sense of release, hopefully. There's some sense of relief that, like, someone else knows what I feel. You paid the price for your stuff like that. And of course, in an emotionally and psychologically illiterate culture, we don't often even know when we're hurting someone to such a degree, because they're busy putting on a game face that says, I don't want to be shamed for having intense feelings. And we're not asking, how much did we hurt you for this? How much will we thing? And if we say, and even people will say, no, that won't hurt me. You can talk to, if you're a man, you can talk to 100 women and say, I'm attracted to this other woman. True. I'd love to have sex with this other woman. True. At least in fantasy. Would that bother you? And there's a whole range of different coping mechanisms around that. But one of them is, oh, it's absolutely fine. I don't care absolutely at all. Go ahead, do this, do that, and the other, and then that's a complete misrepresentation of the fact that it's actually jarring. I didn't know that. I thought I was the only one you thought about, and this and that, and so it's jarring. I feel insecure. I'd like to talk about it. I'd like a week to think about it. And then I tell you it would hurt me about 6 out of 10. That'd be a pretty miserable thing. And at that level of hurt, I'm wondering if we should disengage, and because that's how I feel. And so if that's what's coming up and that's real, well, then you've got an actual map of reality. But you have tons of women in that situation who will deny it or say it's no big deal, which for some it isn't. But then for some it's a devastating experience, and they feel trapped. That if they say it's a devastating experience, they're going to be shamed and hurt and labeled and judged and punished for being one of those women, because that's what's happened to them. And if they tell a lie, then they're going to be hurt anyway. And so they feel trapped, they feel helpless, and they feel small, and they feel, so they want revenge. I'm going to make you feel, I'm going to leave you in the worst possible way, I'm going to sleep with your back. And this is the behavior of scared and terrified people. So the idea that you can heal fear and terror, the idea that you can heal fear and terror by killing people or bombing weddings and stuff is, of course, a faulty idea. It's a completely destructive map of reality. But we're using it as a country to, the war on terror. You don't get a war on terror. You have a war on human beings. And if the people you are targeting for inhuman, torturing behavior and all that are the most terrified human beings, then that's the same protocol you're applying inside. You're terrifying yourself. And then those parts of you that feel hostile and small and miserable and want revenge and want to shout and be heard, then those are the parts you're saying, I'm going to, just drop bombs on you. Well, this doesn't create integration in the psyche. It tears you apart. And so when you go home and see those same parts in your family, what do? Hit the child that's the most scared and angry? All the time, but it doesn't work very well. It just it splits, the psyche, the family, etc. And so I wanted to see, how to respond to this. And so one of the disciplines that I've enacted is don't criticize something and stay silent. That's one thing, to release it, to create flows of data and information. Second is don't just say what's wrong. Figure out how it could be done better. The third thing is try and, in figuring out how it could be done better, to look at a win from various perspectives. Because if you can come up with, here's how you could give me more things for free. I would like more things for free. Go ahead and do it. That's kind of a win-lose dynamic. But if I say, here's a way that you could make more money and give more value to all concerned, that's a better design. That's the principle of good design. So, so I began with TED. And what I realized would help is if there was a 5-minute, a 10-minute, a 30-second action that someone could take at the end of every TED Talk that would be relevant to the talk and could be tracked on a global level. And in that sense, would lead to maybe 50% action. Because if you had something you could do in 30 seconds or to a minute, my bet is that 50%, if you've made a compelling case and integrated it into the app and stuff, would do it. But now you've got millions of minutes being spent knitting the world together towards good ideas rather than anesthetizing and numbing people towards the same ideas. So that was one of my, my first projects. And when I met resistance in the TED organization to the idea, etc., I then formed a website called TEDact, and then reached out to the speakers, and I said, look, did you give this talk because you wanted to look cool, or did you give this talk because you wanted the people watching your talk to behave differently as a result of your talk? And I met resistance with the speakers. And so then I made a little documentary and stuff around that just to illuminate stuff. And I think TED made a minor improvement, in terms of bios of speakers and so that there's at least some sense of being able to read more about the speakers and stuff like that. Then I did some work with AirAsia. There was a variety of web page hassles going on. So I did a screenshot and stuff and sent them to the CEO, who made some improvements in the website, and I talked with their senior tech person. I basically got into that mode of, if there's a problem, I want to do something about it. This is something I did yesterday. It's an app designed to take the Concept Synergy presentation of Lazarus material in their online streaming platform and make it 10 times better and catch it up to such platforms as Audible, catch up and exceed. And it's not clear. It's clear in a technical sense. In a technical sense, the organisms that function best function with feedback. Meaning, if I move my hand like this, and to the eye, there's no movement, that's a destructive system. Meaning, if you don't get feedback about impact, you start to go crazy. Because if for example, I'm going to move my hand to the left, to the right, back, and forward. But you didn't see anything, and my eyes didn't see anything either. What's the point? If I say one word and you hear the same silence as if I hear another word, what's the point? It's like, if there's no feedback, energy stops flowing or it becomes disordered and unregulated. So you need feedback. You need feedback in order to steer, in order to engage and have a healthy relationship with anything. You need feedback. So not everyone likes feedback because, and this is part of the tailspins we get in. Not everyone likes feedback because feedback is threatening within certain belief systems and within certain paradigms. For example, if you believe that if someone didn't like your service, you're a bad person, it's too threatening to hear that someone didn't like your service, because the belief is faulty. You're not a bad person because someone didn't like your service. You're a human being that produces service that or many people don't like. That's and so, but when those are linked because people hate you or resent you or whatever because of the bad service or whatever, well then then it becomes difficult to to navigate in that terrain and get honest feedback, because the feedback implies things that are threatening, that shouldn't be implied but are in fact implied in a poorly designed culture. So feedback is always positive in a technical sense. If you're an engineer and you want to drive a car, you want the more gauges you have, like the low oil gauge, the tire blew out, the pressure, you want feedback, you want data, because that data will help you succeed if you know what you're doing. But not everyone does. If you believe you will fail, then some people don't want the data, because then you will be, it'll look more like it's your fault because you got the data, you just didn't respond to it. So I don't want the data because I'm not going to respond to it, and so there's that dynamic. But technically, anyone excellent wants data. They want the more data, the better. The more relevant data, the better, and they want to keep developing excellence in a relationship with the probability field expressed in the data. So that's every great company owner wants that, and it's why the biggest and most valuable companies are now data companies. Google is a data company. I can sell you data that will help you navigate around this customer and that customer and this customer and that customer. And it's like, oh my goodness, you're giving me data. So data is always a good thing. Data is neutral, meaning if it's positive data or negative data, it doesn't matter. It has the same value because it allows you to navigate. If you get the data that a deer is 10 feet in front of you and you're driving towards it at 20 miles an hour, that's data that tells you can slam on the brakes and have less damage to your car. And perhaps less damage to the deer, and perhaps the deer even has time to run out of the way. That's incredibly important data. But of course, if you're a fatalist and you believe that things are going to be terrible regardless, then you don't want the data. It's like, don't tell me because I'll just worry, but I won't be able to do anything about it. I'm a fatalist. Things will happen that are terrible. I will not be able to prevent them, so the best thing I can do is be in blissful ignorance until the impact happens, and so this is just part of different belief systems. But technically speaking, any intelligent person wants data. They want positive and they want negative data because both are equally valid in navigating. And the most important data is around how to spend less energy to create more sustainable well-being. That's the most valuable data you can get. If I can show you a product that will deliver you more well-being than the product you're using at half the energy consumption in time, money, and natural resources, you want that product. It's a valuable product because of its intelligence, its efficiency. And so that's the paradigm around this. Now, culturally, we have lots of overlays around data and communicating data, such things as if you make a suggestion, you are saying that you are superior to me. That's one misconception that's cultural. This is my area of the world and it's separate from your area of the world. If you give me data about my area of the world, you're crossing a boundary. This has nothing to do with you. This is the paradigm of the isolated individual where no one has anything to do with anyone else. If you want to build a skyscraper right next to my house, it has nothing to do with you. The fact that it blocks out all the light, pollutes the road with traffic, people are looking down on my it has nothing to do with you. This is my area of the world and this is your area of the world, and they have nothing to do with one another. So mind your own business. This is my business and it's not your business. And of course that doesn't hold up very well scientifically either, because if you follow the threads, you can find a connection, deep connections between everything and everything. But particularly if you're in the proximity to share advice or something like that, there is often some impact. And then there's the fact that we have created as a culture an incredibly busy time. I don't know why, but it is very difficult in the United States in particular to get someone for a spontaneous hour. So if I've got a great idea, then that when obviously I want to deliver the idea and move on. But the delivery time may be off because you're just running to a plane to catch, or you've got a deadline, or you're incredibly obsessed with whether your wife will discover your affair that day. You're not trying to, practice. This is a great idea. You don't want to hear it then, but you'd like to hear it at some point, particularly if it's going to dramatically improve or change something that's relevant to you. And so I kept running into this, I've got to go, I've got to go. And with the idea that, I might have an hour of material, and I've got to go in 2 minutes. But they don't know what they're walking away from. They don't know the probability field. They don't know the length. They don't even know what the subject is, because maybe I'm introducing the subject in those first 2 minutes in an abstract way. And so they're walking away from the unknown, basically, without an ability to measure it. And then there's also the fact that plenty of people lack the technical ability to analyze intelligence. So they can't analyze intelligence, which means they can't analyze the efficiency of a technology. An idea is a technology, and some ideas are more efficient than other ideas at creating well-being in a given moment. A design is a technology. A pattern of interaction is a technology, and some patterns work better than others. And so then there's the fact, so if someone cannot evaluate your intelligence, and they cannot evaluate the intelligence of a technology that you're presenting, then they cannot make effective decisions between the technology they're using and the technology that they are refusing or ignoring or could be using. And of course, this is a problem we all have. We all could be having 90% more magical, beautiful lives than we are having if we switch to superior technologies, superior beliefs, superior thoughts and feelings, superior ways of engaging with our biology, superior sequencing, superior goals. Superior in the sense that they deliver more sustainable human well-being per unit of energy invested. And so, the question is, what do you do in that, in that situation? Particularly when the cult memes say, keep out of my business, don't tell me anything, who do you think you are? I don't want to hear it, I'm busy, and I want to put my head in the sand. And so even if you do deliver the whole system, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Then there's also, of course, value hierarchies, because not everyone has the same values. And so what one person sees as a great success, because it cuts the commute time by 50%, is viewed as completely unimportant. The other person is enjoying listening to Audible books on their commute, and that's the one resting time away from all other human beings. And they're not trying to cut their commute at all, so you're not actually helping them because you thought everyone wanted to save time. And this person just wants to get away from people for 2 hours a day, and the only time they have is in their car. So it's you don't understand the hierarchy of values. But the reality is then that other people. So this then brings to the other thing. So I've learned that a significant amount of what is obvious and apparent to me doesn't land for whatever reason, in the in the recipient. Meaning, when I did a whole series on Amazon's ethics and various things like that, Amazon did very little with it, though they have improved some things. It is a very dissociative relationship for the the most consumer-centric company in the world. Of course, they've never sent me a survey. As one of their bigger consumers, I've bought thousands of things on Amazon, and one of their reps said, I have the biggest account that they've ever seen on Amazon. And so I'm a customer. I'm a an expanded customer, and you're the most consumer-centric customer who doesn't ask any, or the most consumer-centric business according to your mission, but you don't ask your customers questions, you don't respond, you don't suggest, you don't engage in this and that way, and so this is a bit of a joke, and so, and to the extent that you have to do snail mail to get non-responses from corporate offices about awkward questions about ethics and things, and you realize, the whole thing is a bit of a joke. But it still leads to some change. Reaching out to board members and this and that, and saying, hey, there's some gaps here. Mission here, this is getting worse, this is getting worse, this is okay. What's this about? This is your core business. And so there's definitely engagement. But, does it lead to, a lot of change? Not necessarily. So one of the things that I've learned is that the very process of articulating a good design, for whatever reason, is healthy for the brain, 1. 2, there's often a part of my life that I can improve. And so it's the same thing, integrity, dynamic, increase the integrity of heart, mind, and body. And then there's the fact that another person. So what I've switched to is putting stuff on YouTube. Is I guess the way to do it. Now, there was a whole thought around this as well. I mean, originally I thought, I'm good at this. And I say that because every time I apply this in my own life, my life gets dramatically better in technical terms. And so there's literally thousands of ways that my life is technically superior to the past because I've applied this thousands of times. And it usually works like I see someone with a problem, I fix it in my mind for them and give it to them. They ignore it, and then I apply the fix to my own life, and my own life gets a lot better. And so, I don't like the idea of waste. And so it seems like focusing outward is a little bit easier than focusing directly inward. If I just say, what are the problems in my life and how am I going to fix them? It doesn't create this dynamic flow. But if I ask what's irritating me in my engagement with technology in the world and stuff in the outside, there's all kinds of things, and that energy flows very quickly and clearly. Having articulated that fully, there's then always some part of that I can apply to myself. And so, for example, with the Concept Synergy app, or it's really a 10x information digestion and dissemination system app that I've developed. Statistically speaking, Concept Synergy will do little or nothing with it. But one, I now have a map for the app that I want to design for information dissemination. 2, by putting it up on YouTube, other companies, some of whom I care about, are more likely to act on this in the interconnection of psychic awareness. The very fact that I've put intense emotion and thought into this idea and articulated it to this level of clarity means that that's a broadcast. And there are people that are going to move in the direction of the field created by that broadcast because it's excellent, because it's better than than what's there by a number of analytics. And so, in summation in this movement, participating actively in heart, mind, and body, in conscious response and in conscious integrity to positive and negative data and information. Designing things and putting things out there, trying to see that everything that we digest as a media concept moves into some kind of integrity and action, is a phenomenal way to increase the integrity, the integration of our lives, and is a step towards beauty, truth, goodness, excellence. It's a step towards the transcendent thinking that says that even if no one I know ever builds this, but some teenager in Sudan watches a YouTube talk about this and says, I'm going to do that, and does. And money pours into Ethiopia, etc., or Sudan, or whatever, and because of that, that's part of an acknowledgement that we're one species. That's part of an acknowledgement that when we synergize together as a species, we have a superior superior probability field. A higher resonance would be another way of saying it, but a superior probability field. And then finally, my then focus has been on how to reduce the friction, because just about everything I interact with, I see it can have massive improvements, including everything in my own life. And so the question is then how not to be worn out by the iteration or design process. And my response is to have a virtual assistant manage the gathering of email addresses, the publishing and editing of the videos, and for me, I just set up this. I have a blackboard, I have a green screen, I have a switch that turns on all the lights, I have a front-facing, high-quality phone camera, which means it has a 10-hour battery rather than the crappy. If you buy a dedicated video camera, their batteries run out in 30 minutes or 2 hours. This thing runs out in 6 hours. I can make a 6-hour continual video without worrying about batteries, and I like that. And so in that sense, it's about creating possibilities and putting them out there, not knowing where they will go, and in that uncertainty, to make the cost, meaning in this case the cost is 42 minutes of my time and $10. That's what gets this video out there. But it's incredibly efficient because YouTube is doing the rest for the next 20 years. This video may be available in some format, and I like that. So this is my general evolution and response towards, I don't want to watch media that makes me numb. I want to watch media that engages me and leads to a transformed world.